There's a point where your soul goes quiet, not out of defeat, but because it's done explaining itself to people who only listened when it was convenient. You didn't vanish. You just stopped performing. Stopped softening your edges to fit inside places that cut you anyway. You didn't become hard. You became honest. And once you tasted that kind of truth, you never went back to sugarcoating your silence. People love to call you changed like it's a crime. Like growth is betrayal. Like evolution is something you owe them an apology for. But they weren't there for the breaking. They didn't stay for the bleeding. They didn't carry the weight of waking up every day and having to rebuild yourself with nothing but pain, grit, and willpower. So no, they don't get to name this version. They don't get to label what they never earned access to. Because this version, it doesn't answer familiar numbers. It doesn't reread old messages. It doesn't crack the door just to see if they mean it this time. This version is not cruel, it's clear. Clear on who gets to sit at the table. Clear on what energy enters the room. Clear on what peace is worth protecting. And once you gain that clarity, you stop trading your comfort for connections that only drain you. Now you walk different. Not faster, not louder, just unbothered. There's no need to prove you've healed. You just move like you have. There's no need to announce your distance. You just stop showing up where you're not honored. And suddenly everyone's confused. Suddenly they miss you. But they don't miss you, they miss the access. The old version. The one that didn't know how to walk away. But this version doesn't come when called. You watched too many people treat your heart like an option. You watched loyalty get mistaken for weakness. You watched your patience get stretched until it snapped. And now, you don't even get mad. You get quiet. You get precise. You disappear not for revenge, but for preservation. Because when you become everything they thought you'd never survive without them, you stop explaining your absence. You let it echo. Good. Because silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's power. The kind they never see coming. You're not loud because you don't have to be. Your presence used to beg for understanding, now it demands respect. You don't move for attention. You move with intention. Every step, every no, every closed door is calculated. Not out of ego, but out of experience. You learn the hard way people will keep taking if you keep giving. They will confuse your empathy for access, your forgiveness for permission. But this version doesn't bend, doesn't explain, doesn't return to fires it already escaped just to prove it doesn't burn the same way twice. No, this version lets it burn. You no longer play the hero in someone else's chaos. You don't offer clarity to people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't play humble so others can feel tall. Now, your silence is not submission, it's strategy. It's how you protect what's left after everyone took their piece. And yes, they'll talk. They'll twist the story. They'll tell the world how you changed. But they won't tell them why. They won't mention the times they drained you dry. The moments they made you question your worth. The weight they added to wounds you were already trying to heal. No, they won't say that. Because it's easier to call you cold than admit they built the ice. But you're not angry. You're done. You're done over-explaining, over-giving, overextending. The ode you might have answered. might have explained, might have forgiven one more time. But that version died in silence. And what rose from it doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't come when called. Because once you've risen from the ashes they left you in, you stop waiting for applause. You stop hoping for recognition. You realize the rebuild was never for them. It was for you to remember your own strength, to reclaim your own mind, to remind yourself that every piece of you they mishandled was never broken, just unfinished. Now you sit in silence, not because you're hiding, but because you're calculating. Every word you don't say is a boundary. Every step you don't take toward them is a message. You no longer argue with chaos. You no longer explain your evolution to the same mouths that once fed off your destruction. And when they reach out, when they show up with their recycled words and well-timed regrets, all they're met with is nothing. Because they don't deserve the upgraded version. The one that doesn't chase closure, doesn't crack just because they knock louder. You don't shrink anymore to fit their comfort zone. You outgrew it. You outgrew them. And the beauty in that, it's not loud. It's not flashy. It's not rage. It's pure stillness. And that stillness, that's what terrifies them the most. They never expected you to stop playing the role, the peacekeeper, the forgiver, the one who always came back when they snapped their fingers. But you've retired from that. You don't answer to guilt. You don't bow to history. You don't move out of nostalgia, you move from truth. And the truth is, they only loved the version of you that knew better. The one who gave everything just to feel like something. But now you know better. And the version that stands here today doesn't beg, doesn't bargain, and doesn't break character just because someone misses the script they wrote for you. You're the rewrite now. You're the plot twist. And no one, not a single soul, gets to edit this version without permission. Because once you become the storm, you realize there's nothing left to prove. You're no longer just surviving the fallout. You are the aftershock. You don't warn people anymore. You don't explain what's coming. You just arrive, and when you do, they feel it. Not because you're loud, not because you're angry, but because you're unmoved. This version doesn't get pulled into old dynamics. It doesn't flinch at familiar guilt. You've seen how low people can go just to keep you down there with them. You've witnessed manipulation dressed as concern, betrayal coated in politeness, sabotage spoken in sweet tones. So now, you don't wait to be wounded. You observe, assess, and exit. You walk different because you think different. Your heart's still big, but now it comes with a gate. And not just anyone gets the key. That's what they never expected, that you'd grow boundaries so sharp they'd bleed trying to get back in. And still, you don't gloat. You don't drag them through the dirt. You just let time reveal what silence always knew. You were never the problem. You were the pattern breaker. And breaking patterns? That takes more than guts. It takes walking away from everything that once felt like home, even when your hands still remember how to knock. But you did it. You outgrew the identity they boxed you into. You dropped the mask. You burned the script. And now you're not trying to be understood. You're too focused on building a life so full, so firm, so untouchable, that those who once doubted you won't recognize the landscape they used to trample. And if they ever do try to circle back, hoping to find remnants of the old you, they won't find ashes. They won't find answers. They'll find a gate, locked, unmoved, untouched, and a version of you they'll never get close to again. Not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to never open that door again. Because when you stop bleeding for the ungrateful, you stop apologizing for healing out loud. You stop minimizing the journey just to make those who stayed behind feel comfortable. There's no guilt in your growth, no shame in your distance, no softness left for people who only ever showed up when it benefited them. And what's left? A version of you that speaks less and sees everything. You're not bitter. You're precise. You're not angry. You're awake. You don't carry grudges, you carry receipts. And every time they think they can guilt you, pull you, bend you back into old patterns, they're met with silence. Not because you're afraid to speak, but because you no longer owe explanations to people who never listened the first time. This version doesn't run from solitude. It rules it. You've built peace from wreckage, discipline from disappointment, clarity from chaos. You turned isolation into elevation. And now, the people who once dismissed you, they speak of you like a myth, a whisper, a warning. Because they know if they get too close, they'll see what they couldn't break standing tall. And still, you don't return the energy. You don't throw dirt. You don't call them out. You simply don't show up anymore. That's the revenge, your absence. That's the legacy, your evolution. They don't get to say they knew you, because they only knew the version that didn't know better. And you're not walking in circles. You're not giving second chances to first-time offenders. You're not watering dead things hoping they bloom. You're on a new timeline now, one where your power isn't loud, it's disciplined. Where your love isn't blind, it's guarded. Where your presence isn't given, it's earned. And if they come back looking for what they lost, let them wonder. Because the version they're looking for doesn't exist anymore. Like, comment, and subscribe.